like you came in with questions, go ahead and jot those down, and we're going to collect those. If you will also, let's see, where can we leave extra cards?
I'll just
So
leave them on
that
the back counter.
Yep, on the back counter. So if you think of something else you'd like to ask. Last year we got a little bit of feedback that was very helpful. That it just kind of calling on folks. Some folks didn't get to them. We didn't get to them. And so what we're going to do is try to go through the cards when I get to the question and answer time, and go prioritize those that will have the biggest impact on most of the audience. And then please be sure you put your name and contact information so that if we don't get to it in this session, that one of us will definitely follow up with you, and particularly if it's specifically about your child and a very specific issue or need. Or if you have like bigger things that you want to talk about, we can always schedule a meeting where I can schedule an appropriate amount of time to really help understand what the issues are. So anyhow, with that being said, I'm Monica Verra-Tirado. I'm the Bureau Chief for Exceptional Education and Student Services with the Department of Education, and this is now my third Family Cafe, and I'm just thrilled to be here. I'm going to introduce my team here, who's here with me in just a second. They're handing out cards. Just a quick little bit about myself. I've been in education now about 23 years. I started as a basic ed elementary teacher and did not think that I would be interested in special education, just went to be an elementary ed teacher. And that year I had the opportunity to be on an inclusion team. And it was inclusion for kids with very severe emotional behavioral disabilities. And I just really fell in love with the field, fell in love with this idea of how can we be creative and think about each child's needs and come up with ways to focus on their strengths. And so with that being said, I went back to school, got a master's in special education, still said, I'll be that basic ed teacher. And then I can support the kids in my class who come in for inclusion. Well, I ended up teaching ESE for several years, and then I became a school-based administrator at a school that was a typical school, but we were a cluster site for kids with very significant disabilities, including kids who are medically fragile. And then I also worked in Title I programs and migrant programs, and my final job at the district level was as director of special education in a large district here in Florida. So I'm very familiar with the way schools and districts work. So some of the challenges that you may be facing, I can relate to that. Also reach out to your directors or those folks that you work with at the local level to see how we can problem solve together. But my most important role is that of a mom, and as a mom, both of my boys went through the school system with IEPs, and so I'm very much attuned to both the challenges and the opportunities. So I've been happy with things, and I've also been frustrated with things. Even when I was the director of ESE, there were times I was frustrated as a parent. And so, and who else knew more in that district but me about what was expected to happen? So through that, I've learned a lot and about what the most important things are. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But one thing I want us to keep in mind is I believe firmly in the power of building strong relationships, and because really every one of us in this room and everyone that you work with, particularly in special education, we're all on the same team. Whether we're talking about service providers, teachers, private school, public school, parents, grandparents, we're all really on the same team. And so the more that we can find ways to work together and understand our different perspectives, the more likely we are to keep our focus on the students as opposed to on the adults. Because once our relationships as adults start to break down, I see more often than not it becomes about the adults, and then we forget about the kids. And so that's kind of my overriding message, but we're going to go a little bit deeper into that. I'd like to introduce April. April, if you could tell the group a little bit about yourself and then introduce Amy, please.
Sure. My name is April Katine, and I am the Director of Bureau Resources and Information Center. And I'm also, part of my duties is over parent services for the state, so I'm very happy to be here and meeting you. My background, I was an ESE teacher for 14 years. I basically taught middle and high school, and then I came to the state as a compliance monitor, so I got to visit about 42 districts over the 4 years that I was a compliance monitor. So I got to really be, go into classrooms, talking to principals, really getting to know the state and learning. Besides what I knew from Leon County as an ESC teacher, got to go into classrooms throughout the state, so that was great. And then I went to Disability Rights Florida, and I was an advocate for 4 years. And that was wonderful because not only did I get to go around the state and be in classrooms, but I got to sit at IEP team meetings and go to mediations and do process hearing with some of our clients. And that was very enlightening. I really got to see what it looks like, boots on the ground from the parents' perspective. And then I was at the Florida Developmental Disabilities Council, so I really got very involved with students with developmental disabilities and providing resources to the state, because those of you that don't know what the DD Council is, provides grants throughout the state to do cutting-edge research and projects and things. I know I saw some of our grant recipients here already sitting in the audience. So. And now I've come back as the Director of Bureau Resources and Information, and I'm very excited. I've been here since January, and it's been great to meet so many people this weekend, and I look forward. My biggest thing is leveling the playing field so we're all working together for the children, because that's really what everybody cares about, is seeing that the children of Florida with special needs get what they need to be successful in college and career ready when they leave school. So I'd like to introduce Amy Malini. She is the parent liaison for the state. So.
Hi, welcome everyone. Gosh, a little history of me. I've worked with children and families for the last 20 years. I'm dating myself a bit.
We all just did that, Amy, so.
In several capacities, mental health aspects, social services, and very excited to be part of this team, especially since Monica has come on as bureau chief. This is very important to get the parents' voice, and she really has passion about that. So I'm excited to have worked with this team and continue to work throughout the state assisting parents.
And so you know now people who you can reach out to. That's number one, because our goal is to try to build relationships with all of you, help foster those relationships back at the district level, and then of course ultimately that school level, because that's where it's most important, is with those folks who work with your children every day and building those relationships with them. So I'm going to go over some information, and Amy and April will jump in. Can you all see that okay? Okay, and for those of you just coming in, if you have questions or suggestions, comments, or you want to set up a meeting at another time where we can talk more specifically about your needs, there are cards at the back table, and we've got writing utensils as well. All right, so some of what I'm going to talk about is kind of the big picture, so that you know when I'm working on behalf of the Commissioner of Education, Pam Stewart, you met her this morning, on behalf of the Governor, kind of what are we talking about, so that if you're in an individual meeting or working with a district, you can say, okay, well wait, that's not what I'm hearing at the state level. And so then that gives you a trigger to say, okay, that's different than what I'm hearing, and that gives us the opportunity then to make sure everybody's on the same page. So we want to be thinking about children from preschool, because most of our kids, many of our kids we get from before kindergarten to post-school outcomes. And that means after you graduate, what's happened? Not just that did you graduate you, but are you having successful outcomes? So that's our vision, is that we're thinking about our children along that continuum, and that we're creating a system, a vertical system that will be seamless. And that you as parents will feel more supported as you're going within the system from area to area. So from pre-K to kindergarten, that's a big transition. But then there's also a transition from 5th grade to 6th grade. So we don't call that doesn't, under IDA, that doesn't have a name about, there's not the elementary to middle school transition, but is it a big deal as a family? Yes. And then middle school to high school? Yes. Right? And then high school to post-secondary. So we're really trying to be, what are those critical timelines? What are those critical points? And how do we create more support for not only you, but also for the team of teachers and professionals, because often that's where they're feeling like, I'm not getting enough information. What worked at elementary? What worked at middle? How do we make sure that we incorporate that into that IEP process? And so our goal is also that all kids graduate college, career, and life ready. Okay, and remember, when we sometimes when I say, when we talk about college ready, career ready. Some folks will say, well, college isn't for everybody. Okay, but we believe that meaningful work and choices are for everybody, right? And so college, in my mind, when we're talking about college, it could absolutely be college, university. It could also mean post-secondary education, whether it's a technical program, a vocational school, right? So you're ready for life learning after school, you're ready for it to be employable, and you're ready for life, because we know life is much more than just work and homework. Well, I'm still trying to learn that, but most of us, we know we have to have recreation and we need to have social opportunities. So that's part of the whole picture. So we have really some very simple big ideas that we've been sharing across the state. We want to move from just thinking about access, meaning, prior to 1975, as a reminder, students with disabilities were not required to go to school, or in states were not required to provide an education, right? So the beginnings were just about access, getting kids to school, right? We need to go to attainment. So from access to attainment, meaning, okay, we're in school, we're in hopefully general education classes the majority of our day as appropriate. What are those high-level goals that we are looking to attain? And then statewide excellence, equity, and excellence. And what I mean by that is that my personal vision and goal is that no matter what your zip code is, you will expect to get the same high-quality service and outcomes for your child. Okay, so that there's not pockets of excellence and other areas that need a ton of support. So if you move from one place to another, you're like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have moved because I had a great thing going here, and now the goal is that no matter where you are, you will get that same high quality level of service. So 3 really simple things that we're focusing on is improving our graduation rate, decreasing the dropout rate, and improving post-school outcomes. Okay? Now, one of the pieces that is pretty exciting as it relates to the graduation rate that's in one of the bills that have been mentioned over the last couple of days that I believe is now with the governor, and that would be Senate Bill 850, does something very unique in Florida. It repeals the special diploma option. Now, oh, yikes, people say yikes. Okay, I'm going to explain what happens though. It repeals special diploma, but what it does is it takes the pathways, and I'm just using the word pathways, it's not in the statute. I just use that word because it makes sense to me. It takes right now what our pathways are for special diploma. We have 2 pathways for special diploma. An option 1, which is pretty much a set amount of courses, and then option 2, which has a work-based component and coursework that you would take, but also work experience. It takes basically those 2 pathways and it moves them into a standard diploma track. So that students who are participating in our access level courses and take our Florida alternate assessment, you all familiar with you with me? Okay, that's what I thought so. Okay. This audience should be, but just in case, instead of that leading to a special diploma, it will lead to a standard diploma. That is good. I know. I was hoping the governor would talk about it today because I'm super thrilled about that. But at first when people heard that it repeals the special diploma, it was like, the kids are all going to get certificates of completion. That's not the intent. The intent is to create those pathways so that students can graduate with that standard diploma, and it'll eliminate some barriers because right now there's certain things you cannot do with a special diploma, right? But you can with a standard. And so it should eliminate barriers and increase opportunities for employment. So for example, right now, if you go to apply for something and you put special diploma, if it automatically bounces your, now everything's online, right? And the computer bounces stuff, bounces your application at, well, it would be a standard diploma. So that's one less barrier, right? And then there were someone who said, but how will employers know if this person has a really significant cognitive disability? If it says standard diploma, first I'm like, well, who cares? That's what God does, right? But I said, well, here's the reality: is if anybody applies for a job, first of all, your diploma, they go well beyond the diploma. So you apply for the job, you probably have to do some kind of an assessment. You have an interview. If you've done all of that and you're the right person for the job, hello, right? So I'm excited because I think it's going to give our students more opportunities, and less doors will be closed automatically just because of the diploma type. There's about 25 states who have that, where students who are on alternate standards and alternate assessment, they have their pathway can lead to that standard diploma. So there's enough research out there to suggest that it's good for kids. It doesn't hurt the business world. It doesn't, you know, it's good. There's much more benefits than negatives. So I'm excited about that. I saw some hands. Jot down your questions so that we can get to those. Okay.
There's cards in the back. If
Yes.
you don't have one, they're on the back.
So there's a lot of good stuff that can come out of that. So it's very specifically, we're going to focus our time today to talk about our parent services and what our vision is for that, what we'd like to see, and then also hopefully hear from you all on ways that, you know, either you tell us today or you send us an email, how can we help to further engage parents across the state with our staff so that we can improve relationships. Where there's rocky relationships, we've got to improve them because kids suffer. When mom and dad are not getting along, and as adults, even if we say, well, we don't fight in front of the children, if the IEP team members are not getting along, do the children know?
Yeah.
Yes. Even if we say, well, we don't fight in front of the children, they know. They know, right? And so the more that we can do to come together, the better it is for kids. So our goal is to increase parent and community involvement and engagement. So not just also parents, but also community. So because what we know is this work is very, very challenging, so rewarding. But we also know, like we've heard today, it takes all hands on deck to meet the needs of individuals with disabilities. Beyond just the bare minimum, we know we've got to have all hands on deck, including community, including folks like Mr. Dan Marino, who has resources and is committed to that. So how do we as a group work together instead of, and I always use the word friendly fire, instead of having friendly fire, because if those of us who care about persons with disabilities, if we're spending all the time angry with each other, we are not moving our cause forward. I can tell you that right now. We're not moving our cause forward. So when we can get on the same page, we can work together, we can engage more folks, and we can continue to move the cause forward. And that's my personal vision, and I hope you'll share that with me. So of course, here's what we know about parent involvement, and this is something that's so important. You all need to know this, but schools need to know this as well. Kids whose parents are involved are more likely to earn higher grades, and more likely to take higher level, more rigorous courses. Now when we talk about rigor, remember that's no matter whatever your entry level is, it's pushing yourself to the next level, right? Be promoted, more likely to pass their classes, earn credits, go to school regularly. Here we go. Have better social skills, show improved behavior, and adapt well to school. And then graduate and go on to some type of post-secondary education or options. So we in education, we know we've got to reach out to parents. So we have an obligation to build those bridges because we also share these things. We want to see this for kids happen as well. Just as parents want that, but so do the teachers, so do the educators, and we're held accountable for it. So one of the things I remind folks is if you're worried about student achievement, and I put, to educators, if you're worried about school grades and you're worried about student achievement, the research is clear you've got to have your parents at the table. And that's more than just informing parents. It's involving parents and engaging them, meaning sometimes listening to things that you may not agree with, but giving it a try. And saying, okay, Mom, Dad, I'm not sure about this, but you know what? We hear your passion. We understand where you're coming from. Let's try this. And maybe also the same thing for parents to the school system. All right, I hear what you're saying. I'm not sure about it, but I'll try it. And then meeting regularly, that's the key, so that we can continue to build success and monitor success and not getting stuck in things that aren't working. That's so important. So I talked yesterday that a focus that we have for kids, of course, is we want to hear their voices and we want to give them choices. That's also a focus for parents. We want to hear your voices and make sure you have choices, voice and choice, right? Very, very important. So one of the things that we are doing is our parent survey. And hopefully, if you haven't taken the parent survey, you've visited our polling station, you can either do it electronically or via survey. Last year, we heard from a very small percent of our families. I mean, we have about 330,000 students with IEPs. We heard from about 11,000 families last year. So we really kicked it up a notch and said, okay, let's get the word out. We've got to make sure parents know. And right now, we are up to 23,000. So we're up over 12,000 from last year. So I'm really excited about that. And I think even after events like this weekend, just that awareness, because I know all of you will go back and you'll say, okay, I'm going to be looking for next year's survey, and you'll be telling your friends and the people in your community we need to be responding to it. The survey asks very, very critical questions. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we learned. So this is good. You might be surprised though. Overall, around 75% of preschool parents reported positively to the 25-item survey. Okay, so that's good. So, and then 74.5 of K-12 parents reported positively. And that kind of doesn't surprise me, because what I tend to see is a need in special education, both as a parent and as an educator, is that there's a lot that is going on that is positive, but when things break down, like the 25% who didn't respond positively, their feelings are probably really, I mean, it's really, really, really not good. Does that make sense? It's like it's either going well or it's horrible. And you're angry and you're feeling like you're not hurt. Does that mean, not very many people said, yeah, it's okay. So what we need to do is obviously learn from where is it working, why is it working, and then how do we help with the 25% who are not feeling like it's working? What are the specific strategies that we need to learn from? Same thing here. So now, here's what we found by preschool. Here were the top 4 items that parents responded to. 95% said that preschool staff respect my culture. My child's evaluation was written in words that I could understand. Staff are available to speak with me. And I am part of the IEP or the Family Service Plan decision-making team. Those are pretty high. Those are pretty high rates that people felt strongly about that. But here were the areas of improvement. So these were lower rated, but still they're not horrible, but still. Only 67% of parents reported that preschool staff connected families with one another for mutual support. So kind of the things that happen here, creating those opportunities for you all to connect, and especially those of you who are preschool parents, the very first time you enter the world of disabilities, that need for support is really, 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 really critical, as you all know. 72% reported they were offered training about preschool education. Clearly, this is something we can improve. These are things that are pretty easy to do some things. Training and workshops. And this is one that we're seeing a theme on, and that is that staff feeling the need that staff can help them connect them to resources. So 2 things, think about this. Connection to other families and connection to resources. And being trained. So these are, right? So I want to know who my resources are. I'd like to connect with other people who are on this journey with me, and I'd like to be more empowered through understanding more about education and about my child's needs and different parent training. Okay? I find this very valuable information. By the way, the data results it's publicly reported. It goes to your district, and it also, if the numbers are not too small, it gets disaggregated by school. So when we finish this year's round of survey, which will be closing when this weekend is over, then it'll take us a little bit, we get the results, but that'll get pushed out, it'll be available. And really the goal is that each district and each school begin to use these to plan on for their parent service programs, okay? school, okay, K-12. Again, they reported overall feeling that their culture was respected. They felt that there was discussion about accommodations and modifications. Here, they felt a little bit lower than the preschool, that information was understandable. So that's something we have to work on. And then again, it's this. So not quite clear as to exactly, although these are strengths, these are considered overall strengths, but it's not in the high 90s like I'd like to see. But most people felt they could understand what was being shared with them. So this is one that came out. One of the questions on the survey is, was childcare made available to you? So one of the things we see is only 57.9% were offered childcare. And so one of the things we're really thinking about is, how do we upfront say, like asking parents, is lack of childcare a barrier for you in participation in this upcoming IEP meeting? So that if it is, we can see what we can do to respond and how we can use our federal dollars to provide, maybe, on-site. And I know when I was school-based, at times, I'd have a staff member maybe be in the other room with some of the little brothers and sisters at the meeting. But I think it's really just making sure that we're planning for that, because we need you to be there, we need you to be fully engaged, and if you've got other children, or you've got other children with special needs, it could be a barrier. This is a lower one too. Only 61% reported school offers a variety of ways to communicate with teachers. So for K-12, parents are wanting to communicate, but feeling like we don't have a lot of different options. Maybe they're limited. Maybe I can only call between this time and this time. Well, then I need another way to communicate, if that's the case. Parents here are wanting information about other organizations that can support their kids. And again, agencies for transition. So big theme that has come out is communication, training so parents can be empowered, connection to other parents, and connection to agencies as ways that we can help families, tangible ways that we can help families on this journey. Oh, sorry, someone was taking a picture. Did you get it? Okay. So here's some of the things that we're doing. Again, I wanted, going back to the survey, so very specifically giving this to districts, encouraging every district, if they do not have a district level advisory council, to start one. How many of you, I can pick on you, I know you're on your district's advisory council. How many of you know if your district has an advisory council? Excellent. Now stand up if you serve on your district's advisory council. Thank you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, every district should have an advisory council. It's a great way for parents to get involved, to help get those messages to the superintendent, to the school board level, because as we know, the importance of educating all students, particularly students with disabilities, if the superintendent buys in and believes it, and the school board's behind it, things are going to really happen in your district, right? Right. And so I really see this as a mechanism. It's not something right now that the state can require that every district have. We can certainly encourage. If your district does not have a district ESE advisory council and you'd like to start one, you can contact one of these lovely ladies and we will be happy to reach out to you and your district to say, here are resources to get it started. Personally, it was so valuable. I learned so much from my parents on my advisory council to help us really keep the perspective of this is what it feels like for a parent every time they go to a meeting where they feel like the district is saying no, no, no. It also helped our parents to know what the challenges the district was facing. So they had a better understanding of, oh, is this why the principal's saying no, no, no? Well, can we think about it this way? Can we problem solve a solution? Because if you don't know what's really happening, when all you hear is like resistance from the district, then you sit in a meeting and you see the budget and you say, okay, I get that. That still doesn't matter to my child, but now I'm going to need help be part of the solution because I get where some of those resistance, or where that resistance is coming from, and then you can be that advocate for change. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. All right, I'm going to go on to April, right? Amy.
About a year and a half ago, we started having real conversations about parent involvement, what's being done on a district and school level we really started to delve in deep to it, and we started off with opening the lines of communications. We have bi-monthly calls every other month with district staff, partner agencies, and parent liaisons. And we have talks as to what these districts are doing. We also review parent survey data to say what's working, what's not. Let's look at the barriers. So we've opened the lines of communications. And that's one of the areas that we've really been working on. A parent services work group was also formed. It's a rather large group, and we have people who are in the professional business, as well as school and district level staff, parents, and partner agencies. And we're developing a strategic plan, which we've been working on in relation to the data we have, where we are, where we're going, and barriers we need to overcome. And we're very excited about this. We've been working on this website for a little over a year, and it's almost ready to launch. The number one thing we heard from parents, when you go to the DOE website, it's very challenging to navigate because there's so much information. It's for parents and professionals. So we went ahead and decided to get information together for parents, a one-stop shop that'll help you navigate the IEP process, the ESE process, no matter what area you're in, pre-K, K-12, after high school. We have resources. There's a student success story, several on the first page, and they change quarterly. So you can actually see students who have been successful from our services. And that will launch in August of 2014. So be looking for the marketing from your school districts through flyers and other information, but we're thrilled about that.
And that's in partner with Fiddlers.
Yes.
So Fiddlers is actually going to host, but we're partnering with them, and the goal would be that every district and our partner agencies have this information. So if you're going to APD, you can find this link. If you go to Voc Rehab, you can find it. So we're all trying to make sure, all the different agencies are all trying to make sure that we all have each other's information on our own websites as well, so that people are seeing that connection.
And speaking about Fiddlers, Fiddlers is the arm of the Bureau that does our parent services, and they offer trainings and support to districts and families. So how many people are familiar with Fiddlers in here? Great.
Good.
How many people who work for Fiddlers are in here? I know I saw a few. Stand up. These are the folks that provide services to parents throughout Florida. There's Fiddlers that serve the entire state. So there are 19 Fiddlers centers around the state of Florida. So if you're not familiar with Fiddlers, please, go on their website or call them and find out how they can be providing services not only to you as parents, but also to the professionals that work with your children every day. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to share with you is facilitated IEP. How many people here have heard about facilitated IEP? Great, that is great to know. Okay, so facilitated IEPs help IEP teams stay on target, reach the goals that they're trying to set for the children, generate informed discussions. So it's a way to encourage IEPs to have those important discussions so that the individual educational plans get written in a way that benefits children. Build mutual understanding based on respect, prevent and reduce conflict. How many like that? Creates agreements based on full participation from all IEP team members. So really ensuring that parents know that they are an important part of the IEP team, that nobody knows your child better than you. So hearing your voice at those IEP meetings are very important. So the Department of Education, Bureau of Exceptional Ed Student Services have been training district staff all around the state. We've been holding one-day workshops, like letting people know what it is, and then holding three-day workshops, training with a company called Key to Ed. They've been working with parent liaisons, the federally funded parent centers, staff, our partner agencies, and parents through Fiddlers Center trainings. So, and there's more to come. We are not finished by a long shot, so we've done a lot of training. The next slide will show you.
Can I stop right just for a second? So the goal would be that we all learn how to participate in a facilitated IEP, because it really, what it is it's a really positive structure, and it can actually be used the facilitation skills can be used for any meeting you're ever in charge of. Because it's that idea of why are we here, what do we hope to accomplish, how do we set some ground rules for the way that we're going to communicate so that we can accomplish our goals, keep focused on those goals, what do we do with issues that we have a conflict with, how can we sort those through. And so we've had lots of success. I'm a believer in that. We implemented that at the local level where I was a local director. And I know it's not a perfect process by any means. And it also depends on the commitment to all participants to adhere to the process. Someone just came up to me and I asked, how's it going in the district that this person's working in? This is an advocate who came up to me. She said, we're having some really good outcomes, but she said, we did just have one where the facilitator, who was a district staff person, because when you're the facilitator, you're supposed to stay neutral. And this facilitator stopped staying neutral. And the advocate called to them and said, okay, you just switched roles. You're acting like the district now. And so that had to get, because that's the deal, is you have to remain neutral, whoever's facilitating. But really the goal is not even that you have an outside facilitator come in. That might be really important if you've got a meeting where you've got a lot of emotion, maybe there's been a lot of conflict, because it's very difficult for anybody to remain neutral in those situations. So the idea is to bring someone in who can remain neutral and really help hear what both sides are saying. Because what happens in these meetings where we've been at it, maybe year after year or for a year, both sides are really kind of saying the same things over and over again, and really nobody, there's a lack of, but that facilitator sometimes can say, okay, I think what I hear you saying is you're really afraid that your son will not be able to socialize in middle school if he doesn't have social opportunities now. Is that what's really happening? And then the school saying, and then saying to the principal, I hear what you're saying is you're not sure how to keep this child safe. What are the things that we can think about that can help keep this child safe in this maybe a more of an inclusive environment? Do you need to train your staff? It's really getting at what's really happening. If you were here for last night's presenter, I cannot remember her name, but what a powerful story. But what she said, I keep thinking about it, when she said, what is it? Tanner Keene. When she said, nobody asks, what's really wrong? What's really wrong? And I think that's a critical question, because once we really start to say, parent, I know you're upset. What's the main thing you really want here? What are you afraid of is not going to happen if this thing that you want in the IEP doesn't happen? Because it's usually that's what's driving us as parents, right? It's this fear of if this doesn't happen, then my child's not going to be prepared, etc. And then school, what are you afraid of? And sometimes they're afraid to say it because they're like, I'm even afraid to say it because I'm going to get sued if I tell you what I'm afraid of. So it's being able to say, here's what I'm afraid my teachers aren't ready for this. I'm afraid that your child may not be successful. I'm afraid that teachers are, so it's trying to create where we can have courageous conversations. And in that, because when that begins to happen, you do see some movement. And I know that there's probably plenty of non-examples, but right now I'm just going to ask you if you've had that happen where you've been able to break through as a parent with a team. Can you raise your hand? Okay, we have a couple of examples where you felt, okay, good. And I'd like to hear from you later. So what were the things that contributed to that breakthrough? Where you felt like, okay, we've gotten through this, everybody's posturing, right? We're all posturing, and we've gotten through that because we're really just individuals, real people around the table. But we want to train parents. And again, what I started to say doesn't mean you have to have a facilitator. It could be a great meeting that there's no contention. It's just a great way to organize a meeting so that it stays focused, So we're really excited about that. And so here are the districts so far that we've trained. And we're doing train the trainer so that we can continue to expand that. And again, our next emphasis is going to be with our parent liaisons. So Fiddlers parent liaisons, raise your hand again. Any of you guys parent liaisons? Do you serve that role? Some of that role? Well, guess what? You'll get to be a train the trainer one day to help train parents on how to contribute to that IEP in a facilitated manner so that when you're walking in, you understand what that process is and it feels comfortable to you.
Monica, before you move on,
yes.
just because your district isn't highlighted here, doesn't mean anyone hasn't been trained in your district. It just means I did a quick count of who was trained. So just because you see a white spot doesn't mean there's nobody been trained. It means we couldn't identify somebody that was trained yet. So there may be people in your districts that were trained. The white is, we didn't have the data to show that somebody was trained. So there's probably been people trained in some of these white areas as well. But the blue areas, we know people have
But
been
as far as
trained.
intensive training, because to do it right, you've got to have the really intensive training and follow-up. And so that's where each year we're bringing more districts on board. But there is at least probably one person in each district trained at this point. Certainly, you're going back to this, we have trained our federally funded parent center staff, or made it available, not sure if everyone participated, and then Fiddlers parent liaisons, and we've also invited partner agencies. So anybody is invited to participate in training. We want advocates there. We want attorneys there. We want
attorneys there? That's not true. There weren't attorneys there? No.
There weren't trainings where?
At IEPs?
No.
at the training.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. At the training. All right, we're going to keep going. All right. So I want to talk about choice just for a minute in Florida to be sure, because again, choice and voice. Obviously, one choice is to remain in your neighborhood public school or to choose another public school. But also when we think about choice, we're talking about the choice of your input into the IEP in terms of what is it you're recommending for your child. But I also want to talk more specifically also about school choice options that we have in Florida. So of course, we do have charter schools all across the state. And one of the things that we are doing is really looking at how available are charter schools for parents if their children have disabilities. Right now we have 518. Well, this is from 11-12, so we have more than that. But we have over 500 charter schools. This is nearly 200,000 students in charter schools, but 16,000 students with disabilities in charter schools. Primarily students who have speech and language impairments only. So one of the things that we're working on is, because we do hear from parents that they may not feel they always have the same access to different choices as other parents. And so we do have a task force that has charter school representation, ESC folks, parents, to really say, let's increase student choice for charter, including kids with more significant disabilities. So not just speech and language, but students with autism, students with emotional behavioral disabilities, students with intellectual disabilities. We do have charter schools that are that serve only ESC kids. So what happens right now for the most part is we have charters that are like ESC center schools, and their target population are kids with disabilities, several like autism charter schools, etc. And then we have the traditional charter schools that primarily serve speech and language. So really the goal is that we'll have more traditional schools serving kids with more significant disabilities so that you have those same choices available to you as other parents. We want to talk about McKay. You're all familiar with McKay. There are several options with McKay, one of which is choosing to go to a private school. And I always want to remind people, when you do choose a McKay private school, when you're in that school, you do give up your procedural safeguards under IDEA, because that's considered a parentally placed private school student. But we do have a lot of families who are taking advantage of this and finding that it works well for their child. Talked to some parents here today who said they felt this was a good choice. You also have within the McKay the choice to choose another public school. And sometimes that's with transportation, sometimes it's without. If it's not within the school's boundary zone, you can choose to go to another district. You can request that. Again, that's typically without transportation, but if there's a public school in another district, that can also be an option. So we included, because you remember, not only students with IEPs, but also students with 504s now can participate in the McKay Scholarship Program in Florida. So our total number of students in McKay choice would be 2,898. That's if they chose another public school. 23,000 are in private schools. So most folks who choose McKay are choosing a private school option for that. I think another challenge I hear from families with McKay is that many of the schools do not go through high school. So sometimes families have to then find another choice, or they're transitioning back to their public school system for high school. And so probably a goal would be to see that there'll be an increase in options all the way through graduation, and or increased transition if you're coming, back into high school for public school. The other thing I do hear from parents is even if they do have a high school, is they may not have the range of options that a big high school may have as far as career training and those kinds of things. A little private school may not have that. So that's an area that I think we can continue to focus on. And this is really cool, because what we do know is that our kids are also participating in what we would typically call like accelerated programs. So we have magnet schools across the state that we have kids participating in, our career academies, and that's going to continue to be a big push for all kids, is that they participate in career-focused kinds of courses. And again, this is all kids. And then making sure, this is one of the components that's in the new bill that hopefully will be signed. Again, I thought we might have heard something today from the governor, but I'm sure we'll be reading about it very soon. But it talks about being sure that these career courses and career certificates are accessible for all kids, so that there's not barriers for kids with disabilities and to participate in these programs, and also to get the certification. Our AP courses, which is advanced placement, our international baccalaureate courses. I mean, again, this is less than 1%, and dual enrollment courses, but it is still good to see that we've got students participating. I had the chance to be on campus 2 weeks ago. I was in a school on the west coast, and there was a young lady who was completely legally blind, who was in an IB program. Just an amazing young lady, but she talked about having to get everything done in Braille, and she's like, gosh, and you guys can relate. She's like, it would be nice if just one time. She goes, I know I have to be a self-advocate. I know that. She says, it would be nice if one day I didn't have to. Like just one day my stuff was already done in Braille, and I didn't have to remind my teacher. And she loved her teacher. She says, I've got great teachers. I love being in the IB program. But she said, it's like you're always having to ask, and people forget. And I agree with her. But it is good that she's an advocate. But I think that's how you all feel. It's like we ask and we ask and we ask. She was getting it, but it was like she's like, it'd be nice if it was just done without me having to remind people. And she's like, how can people forget? She was precious. She really was. But so we want to be sure. I mean, that's our goal, is that every single program we have accessibility to. And to see these numbers get even higher is going to be important. And then virtual education is also an option for our kids. And so what we know is 20,000 kids at the time of this data were in virtual programs, and about 4,400 were kids with disabilities. The majority were students with specific learning disabilities. So I think at this time, some of the virtual actual classrooms may not be as designed yet for kids with significant cognitive disabilities, but that doesn't mean that they won't be in the future. Because the world of virtual learning belongs to everybody, right? I mean, and as I'm walking through this conference, I'm seeing kids of all kinds of ranges of abilities using all kinds of electronic means to connect and engage in learning. So what we're hopeful for is, as we progress in education, we'll find different ways that all kids can participate in virtual. Right now, it's pretty much standard curriculum with accommodations through the virtual platform. So again, this is a reminder of the State Advisory Council that we have, and then that also that we're going to be encouraging districts to establish a district advisory council. We are required and honored to be able to have one. The folks that are on our council are appointed by the commissioner. They provide policy and guidance to the commissioner. For example, the standard diploma option that I described, our State Advisory Council in Florida, those parents and advocates had been looking at this for over 2.5 years, almost 3 years. They researched other states, and so when this discussion had been coming up, they were able to take information and share information with folks who could make that happen. They cannot advocate directly, they can't lobby, but they can certainly share information and share their voices, because what they do is they really advise myself, but I'm serving as a designee to the commissioner. But they're a very powerful group, very engaged, and fact, I think there's at least one member here on our State Advisory Council, right? Stand up so we can recognize you. Yay! Isn't it a powerful, engaging group that they hold us accountable too? They keep our they do. They keep our feet to the fire in a good way, though. But this is just the idea. If you're thinking about a district advisory, and then of course, please be on your school advisory council. Every school has to have an advisory council. Every single school has to have not an ESC advisory council, just a general advisory council. We need parents of students with disabilities on those councils. That's typically the least represented group on those councils. If we really want to change our educational system, we've got to be everywhere. Like everywhere anybody turns, there's got to be somebody there saying, okay, what about this? What about the accommodations? How are we going to make this accessible? We have to. So if you're not engaged at that level, I mean, I know you're overwhelmed and I know your plates are full, but you guys are here today because you're parent leaders, you're community leaders, or you want to be. So I'm reaching out to you to be those ambassadors, to get on committees, get on PTO, make sure PTO has parents with disabilities. Get on any district, just and if you can't, get a friend who can, because your voices have to be on all of those committees. So these are just some of the things that we have available. One of the things that I want to make sure you all know is, of course, when we get to a dispute situation where we can't resolve issues, obviously the best thing is if issues can be solved at the very earliest level, and that would be with teachers and the staff who work directly with your child. Then the typical next level would be with the school-based administrator, the principal. Then you go to the district office, superintendent, and then you look at the state and possibly the feds. So we have options here. You need to know your procedural safeguards so that you, and if you don't, you need to before you leave today, make sure you give us a card so that we can make sure you know what your rights are. But 3 things that you can do, obviously. You can request, you can file a formal state complaint. You can request mediation from the state, and we can sponsor that, a state-sponsored mediation. We are also offering state-sponsored facilitated IEPs. So in other words, if you are saying, I'd like a facilitated IEP, but I really think that at this point, the relationship, not just with the school, but with my district is broken down, then we can send in someone from somewhere else who will truly be that neutral person. And we pay for that, we pay the travel and everything set down. There is a fee, the consultant fee, we take care of that. The district doesn't have to pay for it, so that's not a barrier. And that's a new service that we've been adding. And we've had, I don't know, many requests this year. Some have been successful, some have not. But then if they're not, we ultimately, obviously, sometimes parents and districts end up in a due process situation. But our goal is to try to do everything we can to create opportunities for those problems to be solved without anybody having to go to due process. Because having gone through due process, I feel like no one really wins when you get to that point. You're in, the attorneys maybe, but the families and the school folks, it's very challenging, and then it can take a long time. And meanwhile, you've never resolved that initial issue. So our thing is, okay, what is it like? My goal is always, okay, Mom, tell me what it is that you really, what do you really want to see? Go to then let's talk to the district. Here's what she's really saying. Maybe you couldn't hear it anymore because you're feeling like all you're hearing is that she's angry. But here's really what's underneath that is this thing. Is there any way we can do that? Maybe it's not the way that Mom is envisioning, but maybe the district can say, or the school, we can, what about this? And then they, and we get that dialogue going. And when you get that dialogue going, you're more likely to have good results. All right, let's go to some questions now, because we're going to run out of time. These are just some of our publications. Hopefully you stopped at our desk. This, again, is our parent resources.
There's one. I'm going to come around.
Did you, hang on. I need my readers. Okay, when we prioritize those that are the bigger, broader ones.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so this is, okay. We'll stop.
Make sure you put your name, at least an email or a phone number in case we don't get to yours. So don't turn, I've had some people give me cards without contact information. So.
All right, so here we go. So this is a question about the new, hopefully, options for the diploma. And that question is, will the students take the same high stakes test the general ed students take? So basically, okay, students who participate in our access level courses and are eligible for the Florida Alternate Assessment will still be eligible for the Florida Alternate Assessment. So that doesn't change that. It basically takes those pathways, and again, I just made up pathways, it's not in the law, and it moves them to the standard diploma. Okay? So there will be more information coming out in terms of, for example, right now the regular standard diploma requires 24 credit hours. From district to district, some districts have 24 standards for their special diplomas, 24 required courses, some have 20, they may have a difference. So most likely what will happen is that it will be consistent from district to district. But it will still allow for kids to take access courses and take the Florida Alternate Assessment. And there's other things. The law, the statute talks about course substitutions, portfolio. When you read the statute, and I would encourage you to do that, it has a lot of flexibility built into it. So it's a really good thing for our kids. Okay. Okay. So if your child has a special diploma, how can they satisfy the requirements of the regular diploma? I think I've answered that. And can they still go to school till 23 years old? Oh, good question. So what the law says is that if the IEP team believes that the student, after meeting graduation requirements, still needs services and support for transition, they can defer their diploma and stay in school till the 22 that we currently have. So in other words, you've met your requirements, but we're saying, we're going to now focus on career, socialization, transition, and so you can stay in school. So that's a really good question. So even though it's a standard diploma, you don't have to leave just when you earn that. Okay. When I pull out the readers, then you all know, yeah, well, you could tell by looking at me, but yeah, she's been doing this a long time. When standard diploma for ESC will take effect, if my daughter received special diploma a few weeks ago, she is 20. Well, can she go back to school and receive a standard diploma? That is a really good question, and we don't have the answer to that yet. That's a legal question. 2 groups of kids. How old is she? Okay, she's 20. So we'll follow up. I'll follow up. I've got your email. So that's important. Okay. Will alternately assess students participate in gen ed classrooms or in separate classrooms, ESC or resource? Ooh, perfect. This goes to that slide. ESC service is exceptional student education. We're missing something here. The word education goes there, sorry. Exceptional student education is a service, not a place. So everything we've designed, all of our courses, every one of our courses are designed to be setting neutral. So if your child is on access points and the IEP agrees and you're part of that IEP team, that courses can be taken in a general education environment, they are designed so that can happen. Now, you may, and ironically, I get just as many parents who want full inclusion, and then I get a whole other group of parents who want separate class or even a separate school. I try to be respectful that every parent's voice be heard and we continue to have options so that parents are comfortable with their child's program, but so that you know that any of the courses can be implemented in the general education setting. Okay, good. So this is just about, good, someone wants to, information about setting up an ESC advisory council. We'll reach out to folks. Anybody else who wants that information before you leave, make sure we have your contact, because I think that's a really, really powerful, powerful way to get involved.
And I heard it.
This question is about when will the districts know more about the new Florida alternate test for students with significant disabilities. Right, that's one of those questions that's still with the commissioner in terms of what test will we use next spring. But there is a possibility we will continue at least for one more year with the current test that we have. So that's probably where we are. Okay, so one. Okay, Maureen, you gave me, this is a specific question about DJJ. Maureen, I'd like to follow up with you individually, if that's okay. Whoever, Maureen? Yep. Okay, perfect. Okay, again, this is a specific parent. I can follow up with you. High school. Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay, so a lot of these are now getting very student specific. Yes, so we will definitely, if you did not give us your information, okay. How do I find a copy of the IEP statutes and services? Okay, so Diane, we have that information on our ESC website, but to help direct you to that, we will follow up with you via email so you know exactly where to go, and then you can bookmark it and highlight it and keep it by your nightstand like I do. It's good reading. Yes. Okay. So this will be I think this is our last one. Most of these are very specific.
So if you forgot to put your contact information and you want your question answered, you need to come up and give us that and put it on your card, because there's a lot without contact information.
Okay, good. Okay, so please talk about the new personal learning accounts. So this is the personal learning account is one of the components that is in the bill that may be statute soon. And as you heard, I think it was Senator Gardner talked about it yesterday a little bit, and he said think about it as similar to the McKay. It allows for parents to utilize dollars and basically customize an educational plan or program for your student by using those dollars. So you're not limited to just McKay. Like right now, basically the McKay voucher, you take the dollars and you have to pick either a private school or another public school. But with this voucher, you could pay for, you can pay for private school services or tutoring. You can also pay for related services, speech, OT, PT, those kinds of things. You can customize that. You can use it for post-secondary options to maximize, for example, if you're looking for some on-the-job training and you want to create a very customized, unique approach for your older transition age student, it would allow you to do that. Now, all we have now is just the statute.
What voucher is that?
What statute?
Personal learning.
Okay, it's Senate, I'm sorry, we just have the bill, not the statute, it's not a statute. It's, if you Google Senate Bill 850, Senate Bill 850 is the name. It has that and it has like a million other things in it. I mean, it's a huge bill. But if you look that up, then you can find the statute itself. But there will be tons of communication and tons of work, because each of the way a statute works is it requires rulemaking. And so rulemaking is the job of the Department of Education, and part of that will include opportunities for public input and public comment. Okay, so, okay, did you want to, okay, one,
Yeah,
I'm going to break my rule, yes.
I'm sorry. Can you split that? Like, let's say you want to get the educational part from the school district, but you want
Then have to look into
to
that.
increase it instead of 2 hours a week.
I'm going to have to, we're going to have to look into that. I'm not sure if you can, it looks like you have to be, like, yeah, I think, yeah. Yes.
That's the new rule, but isn't it that we have to put out money first?
No.
I'll have to,
Money for a service or something?
And get that.
that I'm not sure of yet. So those are all good questions. And so that's another thing, all of you as parent leaders, as you start to research this, please give us questions. Because you're going to be thinking of things that I'm not going to think of. Like, and get those questions to us so that when we're rolling out the technical assistance to parents and districts, we've got as many questions and answers that we can get out there. Thank you so much for your time, guys. Be blessed. Thank you.